The Spotrac Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Spotrac Podcast. Kevin Sylvester, Paul Peck, Mike Giannetti, and we are presented by Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment. You know it by now, what they do. They empower professional athletes and entertainers with everything they need to know to make the best decisions about their finances and wealth. Learn more by visiting morganstanley.com/GSE. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, LLC, member SIPC. Gentlemen, we're going to start with my favorite topic.
Yeah, we are, and right in your wheelhouse. And then Mike, this may be our most eclectic version of the Spotrac Podcast, because we're going to talk about your favorite sport, which is golf. We're going to talk about women's professional sports, which we don't talk about a lot here, and then we're going to transition that into sports in New York City and the disaster that it is. How about that for covering all kinds of topics?
Stick around. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, this is going to be. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's start with the PGA Championship, and because there's no salary cap on the PGA Tour. But there's plenty of money to be won on the PGA Tour. And it's interesting how they do it. You have the week in and week out purse, you have the money list, but then you also have the points race with the FedEx Cup. And by accumulating those points, you set yourself up to make some
$10 million, right?
Well, but see, everybody looks at the $10 million.
Well, that's something to look at.
No. Believe me, I'm not diminishing that. But they also have Wyndham Rewards this year.
Right.
So the top 10 in FedEx Cup
Free
points.
hotel rooms? Is that what that is?
How about the person?
Or an actual hotel?
The person who's, well, you probably invest in one. The person who is number one in FedEx Cup points going into the playoffs, and there's only 3 playoff events this year, will win $2 million.
Nice.
All right.
Right after, so in the top 10, there's payouts for the top 10 going into the playoffs.
That's a nice little partnership.
Right. But think about this. You make the FedEx Cup playoffs, the top 125, so you get into a tournament where you can make more money. And then if you advance to the top 100, again, another tournament where not everybody can earn money. And then if in the final, the Tour Championship, no cut, 30 people. There's no cut in the second playoff event either, I believe. No, that's not correct. But anyhow, the last one, you make the Tour Championship. I mean, you're making a great income and earn annuities, and it's really a great deal for the players.
Nice
to make that. So there's a lot of money on there.
Because I think some people are surprised week to week that the purses aren't bigger. Do you get that sense that people are surprised that the PGA Championship was only worth $1.9 million? I'm serious. No, I'm serious, because I think we think of guys like Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, and they have matches for $10 million easily themselves.
Well, they've done it one time. They've done it one time.
Right, but we see those kind of numbers getting thrown around in the marketing and the endorsements that go along with these players, and you expect the on-field earnings to be a little bit more. It's just sort of how sports work these days, right?
Well, I guess perhaps because when they see someone making a salary in baseball, X amount, but they're all here's a key thing to know with the PGA Tour. And for those who listening here who don't know, I am an announcer on PGA Tour Radio. I'll be at the Canadian Open coming up in a few weeks. So,
you and no one else.
Well, actually, Hamilton Golf and Country Club.
Nice.
I went and played it a couple weeks ago. I'd never been there. Awesome. I mean, just it's going to be a shorter golf course, but they're going to have the rough, thick. Green speeds will be ridiculous and a lot of false fronts. I believe Scott Piercy was a champion last time was there, and I think 8 under might have won. Which
that's not bad,
right? Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah, for a PGA Tour event, that's tough,
right? But so they are all independent contractors on the PGA. They play on the PGA Tour, but they can also go play in the European Tour. They can play in other events. So they're responsible for all their travel expenses, their caddy expenses, their health insurance. So they have, their coaches. They got to pay the coaches and all those things. So Brooks Koepka, for example, Claude Harmon is his coach. So I don't know what he pays Claude, but I'm sure Claude's on a retainer. Claude travels to all events. I saw him and chatted with him just for a bit in Dallas when I was covering Koepka there for the Byron Nelson. And so, those coaches probably covers the coaches' travel and all those things. That all goes into it.
Yeah, and explain how the sponsorship part of it works. Not like the Nike. Like, doesn't every pro golfer sort of have backers a little bit that help cover some of the expenses and things like that beyond just what you see on the hat and the bag?
Well, it depends. So someone on Koepka's level, Like, so he's sponsored by Nike head to toe, right? He's got to wear. Yes, right. I like the swoosh better than the Nike name.
Me too. I think I do too.
I didn't like that either.
They've done better. Heck, they should just use his own logo now, right? I mean, he's getting into that category.
We're getting there,
think, right? So he gets paid by Nike. I don't believe he has a club deal because Nike used to have to play the golf clubs. Matter of fact, Brooks played the Nike clubs, I know, for at least 1 year after they stopped making clubs because his caddy was showing me these in Boston, and I said, wow, you still using Nike clubs? Like, I can't talk him out of it.
Tiger hung on for a while too, right?
Yeah, they sent him all the backups.
Yeah.
Until they made a change, but Tiger's got to deal with TaylorMade now.
Right.
I'm not sure if Koepka has one of those deals, but he also has a marketing deal with Michelob Ultra, and he may have one Rolex or whomever. But what you're talking about, Paul, is like Zach Johnson's the classic example of this. When Zach Johnson wanted to be a pro, he got members of his golf club to put up like $5,000 each, maybe $10,000 each, to give him the money to go out on tour to pay his expenses so he could travel, pay entry fees
during the tournaments, right?
Yeah, on the minor circuits to build his way up, and he would pay him back percentage
Almost
of
like
earnings.
buying a stock in him.
Correct.
Right?
Great stock to buy, by the way. 2-time major champion in Zach Johnson. Sean O'Hare, a famous one in a negative way. His father cashed in his 401k to send him to all this training and stuff, and he had to pay him back, and it just it got ugly, unfortunately. But O'Hare's had a very nice career on the PGA Tour, so I think that's what you're referring to when it comes to that.
You miss the cut, you make nothing?
You miss the cut, you make zero. From purse, but some sponsors require you to play an X amount of events, right? Some players will show up if they don't, let's say, for example, they don't have a club sponsor, a ball sponsor. Koepka, by the way, Titleist ball, but some companies, I think they're getting away from this, but they'll pay, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to wear my hat this week. They're gambling, if you will, essentially, on this guy's going to make the cut and play well and make the weekend
on TV
and get all that television money. Yep. So, that happens a little bit too. So, that's how tour. But if you don't make the cut, you don't get paid. Wow. Still have to pay your caddy
and your travel
and your hotel
and your hotel.
But there are some, I mentioned the Canadian Open. So RBC is the sponsor of the Canadian Open, right? Royal Bank of Canada. And they have players that they sponsor. So part of their deal is, hey, we're going to, we'll sponsor you. You can wear a logo on a shirt, on the bag. You have to play in our two events, the RBC Heritage and the RBC Canadian Open. And so, player's not going to agree? They want to play anyway, so they just work that into their schedule and how it's done. And then you earn your way into the PGA Championship in the majors. And that's where the biggest purses are.
Right.
The Players' Championship has the most money. And, Rory McIlroy won that. The Masters pays out a ton of dough. PGA Championship, same thing. The majors pay big money because it's the biggest events.
And it generates the biggest sponsorships and the biggest TV ratings. It's all hand in hand.
But you'll see a purse for, let's say, I don't know, PGA was probably around $11 million. I don't know what the total purse was, but, the payout's not just Brooks Koepka. The payout moves all its way down to the top 70 spots.
Yeah, 82 golfers it ended up being.
Yeah, 82 golfers got paid.
$1.9 million to $18,000. That's the spread from Sunday.
Right, and there were club professionals that made it, so some club professionals got a nice check for making it in the PGA Championship.
And got to play the PGA Championship.
Right.
So.
Now, $1.9 million was interesting for Brooks Koepka. He'll pay out his caddy 10% of that. That's the standard. I assume he has that agreement. That, by the way, there's no caddies union. There's just kind of a standard there. Found this out with the whole Kuchar situation.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, probably 10% goes to his caddy, and he probably has to pay X amount to his coach. One of those coaching deals might be, hey, if I win a major,
So the coaching deals can be structured like that? If I win, you get a cut?
They can
That's
be.
That's interesting.
They can be.
Right.
But Claude Harmon now is, even more, if he wasn't famous. He was famous enough for the great Harmon family. So anyway, that money will go there. He's got to pay taxes in New York State.
Say,
right?
Right. There you go. We're always
a lot of money
into
coming
that.
off here.
There's
money. A lot of money chipping away here.
A lot of money, but he's still okay. He's still going to be.
Yeah. Let's talk Koepka because he's on a bit of a tear here, right? Is that safe to say?
He's on a major tear.
4 majors in 23 months. That's a tear.
That's right. If you could bet on a golfer to win the big tournaments half the time, you do it, right?
Especially this one, right? Because of the length, the distance. You have to go long in this kind of a tournament, correct?
The guys who finished first and second were the picks going in.
That's right. Favorites.
They were the favorites going in.
2 big long hitters.
The golf course playing soft. The other long hitter, Rory McIlroy, didn't perform anywhere near where he wanted to when it came to that. But yes, because of course playing long and soft, difficult to hold. I mean, the two guys who finished second in the Masters finished 1-2 here at the PGA Championship.
Right.
That's no mistake, right? I mean, that is the number one player in the world finishing second, and you had who's now the number one player in the world going out there and winning it. He blistered the course on day 1. Came out with another great round in round 2, and then I don't want to say, just kept it for the most part on the train tracks.
It was entertaining, right?
Yeah. Well, it kind of he went into classic Tiger weekend Masters mode, which is I have built my lead. I have kind of scared everybody else into, oh my God, how are we going to catch this guy? So just go out and play par golf, maintain your 5, 6, 7 shot lead. If the wind hadn't kicked up a little bit on the back 9 Sunday, he would have won by 5 or 6 shots.
I don't think he went in saying, "All right, I'm just going to shoot par."
Passive,
par.
yeah.
I don't. That to me is not Brooks Koepka.
Yeah, but to me that's a smart. And whether he did or he didn't, to me I think that's a lesson that a lot of younger golfers have learned from both Tiger and from Mickelson to some degree. Is that you don't change the way you play, but you dial it down a notch. You don't have to go for every pin when you have a 5-shot lead on Saturday at a Masters. You can be fine walking out of there with a lot of pars.
Correct. He clearly knows how to win U.S. Opens and PGA Championships. By the way, that course was set up like a U.S. Open. At least what the traditional U.S. Open is. Very thick, rough, long golf course. So that's why I wasn't surprised that Brooks Koepka was going to win that. Not only that, I walked with him for 4 rounds the week before in Dallas. He should have won that golf tournament.
Right.
He was not happy after 36 holes that he wasn't in the lead. I asked, he was 11 under. And I said, hey, you're playing pretty well, 65, 66. You happy where you're at? He goes, no, I want to be in the lead.
I got 2 points for you about him.
Yes.
One is he the real deal? I mean, is this just another incarnation of Rory McIlroy and Jordan Spieth where we sort of had this conversation, maybe 4 or 5 years ago with each of these players? Spieth fell off a truck, and he looked actually decent in this PGA Championship, but I think it's because the greens were pretty plain and simple, were they not? I mean, Spieth can't putt, and when he can putt, he's fine, and he was fine this weekend.
Correct.
And
he almost gained 10 strokes on the field putting.
And from everything I've heard, it's because these greens are set up to be fairly easy. Everything else on this course is long and difficult, and then when you get to the green, it's sort of fair play. So that made him look a little better than he's been, right? Because he's not been good. Almost terrible at times.
Jordan has, to his standard, right? I mean, Jordan...
Well, he said it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying his putting was fantastic. Then it went away. His ball striking a couple of years ago was near the tops on the tour, but his putting just went away. And now his putting has gotten better. The problem with Jordan has had is when he's good, he's really good, but he has blow-up holes. He did it in Dallas. Through 2 rounds, he had tied for the most birdies in the tournament, but he also had double bogeys in there. You can't make double bogeys if you're going to win a golf tournament.
So does Koepka have that mentality, or is he more robotic? Is he more like the Tigers, where you get in a groove? He knows what he's doing mentally. You know what I'm saying? Is this can he withstand this? Because now this is a big standard. He's put himself on a pedestal now.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing with Brooks Koepka. Everybody wondered, why doesn't he talk? He had a little chip on his shoulder because nobody talks about him. And he finally started, talking more. Like he didn't come up as the phenom.
No.
I think, the guys you mentioned.
That was Rory, yeah.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy was a teenage kid, coming on the scene. Jordan Spieth, same thing, coming out of Texas. You didn't hear about Brooks Koepka. He went overseas to.
Yeah, wasn't he did I hear them talk about he was like one of the last guys to make the golf team in Florida State, I think?
Florida State,
right?
that's correct.
He was not a hot young junior that everybody was chasing, right?
No, this guy's worked at it. He's famous for how he works in the gym. But he's worked at his game. This doesn't happen by accident, right? I mean, this is a great athlete who's become a great golfer, but the mental part of it too. I mean, he's laser focused. He likes playing fast. He hates slow pace on the golf course, and he's just not flamboyant. He's not flashy.
No,
he doesn't wear anything crazy. I mean, Nike script stuff for him, but he's just the guy's.
We were talking about
navy
before the
blue,
show.
And
he kind of feels like Mike Trout, right?
Yeah, I thought you brought that
Right.
up. I think that's an incredibly accurate comparison.
Those are big shoes to put him in right now.
Maybe the single most talented player in their sport that a lot of people don't know very much about.
Someone, I forget which, forgive me, one of the golf writers wrote about it. Might have been Chip Duke or somebody. They said, this guy is so good looking, but it's average good looking. He's like kind of plain good looking, like Ken Dow good looking, right?
Yeah.
He's so good looking, he doesn't stand out from anybody.
I heard a lot of conversation this week about how he's this linebacker type player. He's like 6 foot, right? He's like 6 foot 190.
He's like, I'd say he's
not this towering figure.
He's not he's not DJ, right?
Right.
And look at Dustin Johnson, who he's good friends with, great athletic build, but DJ's like 6'3".
Right.
He kind of walks like a cowboy up the golf, just kind of, doing his own thing. Koepka doesn't really show a ton of emotion on the golf course, much like Dustin Johnson, but it's just this, stormtrooper-like walk, if you will.
Yeah.
But that's him. Like, that's fine. He's trying to be more outspoken on stuff. Here's the thing. Be careful what you wish for, right? Now that everybody's picking him, talking about the greatest golfer, he's on a Tiger-like run. There's going to be more requests for interviews. There are plenty now, but it's going to be even more sponsorship opportunities, things that are going to take him away from what he's done, because it's happened to Spieth. Ricky Fowler,
yes,
they did a great piece on Golf Channel the other night about, Ricky Fowler's the more popular golfer because we see him in commercials and all these things, but Brooks Koepka
when it matters
has had the better career.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing with Koepka. He doesn't win PGA Tour events, this is why nobody talks about him. Yeah, this is why nobody talks about him, because he's only won
6 wins.
Right, he's won 6 times.
And 4 of them are majors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. And you're like, we were having this debate at dinner once at a tournament. Like, wow, it's in Dallas. Is Koepka a Hall of Famer? I'm like, he's won 3 majors. How can he not be? Like, well, he's only won twice on tour events. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, come on. He's won 3 majors in a short period of time.
It's a really interesting
Kevin, why
debate,
is this?
Kevin.
And
do
he wins
do you
it.
have answers?
Well, I'll tell you why. Number one, when you go to a PGA Tour event, the field, I think it's tougher to win a regular PGA Tour event than it is a major. And Koepka even addressed this at the PGA Championship. And, why is that? Well, number one, you have 156 golfers, and anyone can be hot at any moment. I mean, you saw a Monday qualifier win a tournament this year on the PGA Tour. Names escaped me for a second, but, just he's playing hot, comes through and wins, hot again. So you kind of run into those things. When you get to a major, there's certain pressure. And there are the PGA Championship, like you have 20 PGA professionals. You discount them. They've played their way in. They've achieved something by getting there already. And they're not used to playing week in and week out against the game's best players. So it's great that they're there, and I'm not trying to put them down, but like no one would ever pick them. Even if I gave you 1,000,000 to 1 odds, you probably it would just you wouldn't do it. And then you've got to eliminate half the field. You got guys who aren't going to make cuts. You look at their history in majors, guys who don't have the distance to play on that golf course, and most of the golf courses now in majors, so you eliminate them. You look at the Masters, there's only 80-some-odd players in the field. You have previous champions. Take 20 of those guys out. You have other first-timers there. You're like, they need to learn the golf course.
Right.
So and you get to the weekend, sure, 50 guys make the cut, but half of them don't have a chance. So now you're down to 25. Over 2 rounds of golf, if you're one of the best players in the world, do you feel you can beat 24 other players? Yes, you do when it comes to that. And I think Koepka is the same way. So I think there's a different mentality for the majors. He even says he focuses more on the majors when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And week in and week out in the PGA Tour, it is tough to win because anybody can do it
This is how I look at it, and it's completely arbitrary. I'm just saying this because of, I've followed athletes in different sports, and you sort of understand how the great ones think because, that's what we follow.
Sure.
I think he takes those non-majors like practice. And he uses those to do these shots that, Paul, you talked about you don't do on a Sunday, at Augusta. And he takes a little liberty and he takes a little bit off, and he doesn't have the laser focus in those events because he doesn't want to get mentally fatigued. And you can. I mean, if you play 16 tournaments, we're seeing it with basketball right now. There's a reason the Golden State Warriors took a month and a half off, right? Literally. They all just shut it down for a month and a half. And we all freaked out. But they're playing their best right now without one of the biggest players. You sort of have to do that. You sort of have to know how to do that. And I'm sure if you asked him, there are weekends where he's just there to have fun, or he's just there to fill an obligation, right?
Or work on something.
And maybe physically he gives it his all. But I bet mentally he is in other places, and he doesn't use that mental energy that he would use at Augusta or at Bethpage.
I think that's fair to say about several players, but I will say when they teed up, they want to win.
That's what I mean. Physically, you're all in.
Yeah, they want to win. But here's the thing: if it's off, I think for a guy like Koepka, if it's just off, okay, I might work on some things here. I'm going to try to finish the best I can. I'll give it Tiger Woods at Bethpage Black. Now he's disappointed he didn't make the cut, but he had a shot in the rough on the second hole on Friday, buried in the rough, and he just chipped out to the fairway, and they're like, "Whoa, why wouldn't he go for the green here?" And I think Tiger realized, I'm not beating that guy this week. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why am I going to risk this?
Yeah, he shut down
with that.
That 63 shut down a lot of conversation.
Yeah, is there anybody comparable, Kevin, to a Koepka in the sense that almost all he does is win majors? Has there been another golfer that's had sort of the career path where half or 40% of his total wins have come in the biggest tournaments that? Because it's very unusual, isn't it?
Well, let's look at the number one player in the world prior to Koepka just taking his spouse, Dustin Johnson. You know how many majors he's won? One. Yeah. One. But he's won 19 other times. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a career exemption on the PGA Tour because he's got 20 wins, which is an incredible career. How many? Mickelson, right? I mean, Koepka's approaching Mickelson
until
here
he won his first couple majors, like he had, right?
Right. But Phil's won over 45 times on the PGA Tour. Unbelievable career, right? I mean, so
this is the reverse of that to some degree.
I guess, yes.
Smarter,
I think that's fair,
right?
Yeah,
smarter.
Yeah. Well, last question I have for you.
But I just want to say this: I think prior to winning this. And this was part of our discussion at dinner. He's like Lee Janzen, won 2 U.S. Opens. Mm-hmm. Is Lee Janzen Hall of Famer? I'm like, the guy won 2 U.S. Opens. Andy North, what did Andy North win aside from U.S. Opens? Curtis Strange, right? He won back-to-back U.S. Opens. That's they're comparing Brooks Koepka to, and I'm like, I don't know. You've won back-to-back U.S. Opens, back-to-back PGA championships.
He's the number one golfer in the world.
Yeah,
now.
I think that
doesn't that mean more than winning the Heritage Open somewhere along the line, or a random couple tournaments?
Well, sure.
I'm saying in the big picture of things, doesn't back-to-back U.S. Opens mean more than 4 other PGA wins?
No question.
Is he the one that's very analytically driven? Is that Koepka?
He looks at numbers. He's referenced it a little bit, but
who's the one I'm thinking of? Is that DeChambeau?
It's Bryson DeChambeau.
Okay,
right.
I get those mixed
who's
up.
Won more PGA Tour events than Brooks Koepka, but no majors.
Not when it matters.
Last question I have for you on this was you brought up
DeChambeau will win one.
You brought up Tiger. Obviously, such incredible anticipation after the Masters. He was the betting favorite, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. This course wasn't really built for who Tiger is now. Where I'm getting was that Masters just the perfect storm of everything falling in place for Tiger, or was it the beginning of being a new Tiger that should be able to compete in things like this? Or you know where I'm getting with it?
Well,
everybody wants to know what do we expect out of Tiger?
Here was I didn't think Tiger would win or even have a chance to win at Bethpage Black. I didn't think he'd miss the cut. But here's why I didn't think he would be a big factor in the week. Because his driving accuracy is not great. Really never was, to be honest. He just hit the ball further than everybody else. And it's a distance game. You only get analytics.
Which he doesn't really do anymore, right?
Well, no, he hits it plenty far. He hits it plenty far, but it's not as accurate. I followed him in Mexico. I saw him hit driver on 2 holes on a golf course that long players overpowered. and Dustin Johnson won that tournament easily. But Tiger kept hitting iron off the tee to find fairways and greens. But he had left himself plenty of distance. I remember one hole in particular, he had 210 yards into the hole when his playing partners had 140.
Wow.
So because he didn't hit driver off the tee, because it wasn't accurate. He was fairly accurate at the Masters, but think of hole 11 at the Masters in the final round. Pushes it right, all of a sudden he's got a little bowling alley out there. There's no bowling alleys at Bethpage Black. There's that thick rough, the fescue grass. You cannot be off the beaten path, if you will, off the fairway at Bethpage Black. Plus all that time off. I mean, he achieved something that was incredible to come back and do that. Now let's look at the last two tournaments Tiger's won. Tour Championship, 30 golfers. He had to beat 29 other players, right? I mean, if Tiger's on, I'll take Tiger at any time when it comes to that. And the same thing with the Masters. Again, what I mentioned before, when you got to the weekend, you're near the top of the leaderboard. The interesting thing was first time he's come from behind to win a major.
I do like him at Pebble, though.
I like Tiger at Pebble, too, because the course will play a little bit shorter, knows how to play the golf course. Pebble, U.S. Open, I think more players will have a chance to win there than had at Bethpage Black.
Yeah, and that's next month's U.S. Open, which is the next major.
By the way, golf has been great. We've had Rory McIlroy win the Players' Championship. We've had Tiger Woods win the Masters. Brooks Koepka, the PGA Championship.
We're going to talk about it a little bit. You need your stars to win. You need them to win.
I mean, it's been great. And you're going to have, you want to mention this on Spotrac.com?
Yeah, coming soon. PGA Tour earnings. By player, we're going to eventually get to a spot where we're doing it by tournament, so you can be able to see, Koepka's earnings, at Bethpage and so forth. We'll get there. It's going to take some time, but we're going to, release probably in about a month and a half here. Hopefully right around that U.S. Open time, we'll have player earnings.
Yeah,
sounds good.
PGA player earnings.
And it's, you'd be amazed at how much money players have earned, not only over a season, but what they've earned. Like if you look at career earnings on the PGA Tour, there are some players you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
A couple of consistent top tens, and you're right there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, the money does fall off quickly. Like, for instance, I think third place Sunday was $500,000.
Sure.
I mean, even between Koepka and DJ, it was 1.9 versus 1.1 million.
Right.
That's a lot of money. I mean, that miss in 16 was a lot of money for DJ.
But that's why in golf, like it's not like it's not like the NBA championship. You have a champion and then second place. Hey, second place, there's something to shoot for there.
Oh, yeah. There's
Third
no
place,
taking.
Right. I remember Joel Damon at the John Deere Classic last year. He made a putt for par on the 18th hole, and he's having a great tournament, and a little fist pump there. And I said to him in the post-round interview, I said, hey, great fist pump there. That's a lot of FedEx points you got for the playoffs. He goes, and a lot of money. I need that money. I just thought it was.
That's great.
I thought it was a good, honest answer.
Speaking of people that need money, huh?
Yeah. Yes. How's that for your transition? So we mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit of women's professional sports, which we don't talk as much on here maybe as we should. But Mike, you have started to get Spotrac into the realm of salaries for women's professional sports, and again, by its nature, they're the WNBA is what we're going to talk about, and it's probably the most prominent of all the women's professional sports. There's been some hockey, there's been soccer, there's been some softball, but nothing that's sort of captivated a broad scale like the WNBA. What were the things that jumped out at you that you learned about diving into the WNBA's payment history?
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to give a little shout out here. We've partnered with highposthoops.com, which is a really nice website that's been tracking the WNBA for years and years and years. That's really where the news has sort of driven from. And we were able to partner with them to obtain the data for the WNBA for the past couple of seasons and the couple of seasons going forward. So Spotrac now has live WNBA salaries, contracts, salary cap trackers, all the tools we have for the other sports. So we've just launched that this week. So sort of in lieu of that, we're going to have this conversation now that I've had, a few days to sort of, digest these numbers and see where we're at and then sort of understand where we're going, because it's a pretty interesting time for the WNBA right now for a lot of bad reasons, unfortunately. Here's what I found. I did a lot of research here, obviously, in preparation. Let's start backwards here, guys. The number one point that came out of my kind of homework with this is we only know what we know. The league has not released any revenue, Nobody really knows what the heck is going on financially with this league. It's just they're keeping it lock and key, in a computer somewhere in New York City. That's just how this thing is working. The NBA was sort of latching onto this, and they've funded this thing for quite a few years. I mean, they owned the teams for the better part of the first decade of this league, which is, by the way, 23 years old.
Really?
23 years old.
Wow.
This league is 1996.
That's great.
Yeah, it is. So it has sustained, and it does appear to be in good shape. When I sort of ran the numbers with attendance, it was up and down, and then it actually nosedived in 2018. And then you know what I did? I instead of saying, is there a problem here, I sort of looked everywhere. Everybody nosedived in 2018. NBA, everyone went down in in-game attendance. It's a problem for every league, male or female. It's a problem. People don't want to go to games because games are on TV, games are on streaming devices, games are on Twitter.
And the food costs a fortune at games.
Parking, all
Right.
that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It adds up. So if I'm paying $40 for a ticket, I'm paying $120 by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that whole experience as a whole is just sort of degenerating. So I don't think anybody should blame the WNBA for being a part of that, because viewership's up, way up actually, to the point of they just signed a new lucrative deal with CBS Network. They're going to play a good portion of their games on that channel, which is widely used. They're on Twitter. They're streaming on Twitter their games. They're on ESPN2. They're doing well. I mean, those are big names to have this market on. They're doing well, I think, in all the right spots they need to be locally. We just don't know. We don't know from a revenue standpoint what the league is earning. And the reason I bring it up is that the Players Association has now officially opted out of the CBA, which now expires after this season. So this is a big year. This is sort of the wind down to what looks like it's going to be a holdout. And it looks like this is going to be the first of a few holdouts, right? Because I think we're going to start with this WNBA. We're probably going to have the NFL and the NBA in a year or two, and then I think baseball as well. So this is a really pivotal 5 years for sports money in general, and I kind of like that the women are first. I like that, right? I like that the NBA isn't going to dictate how this all goes as a trickle down. I like that the women have a chance now to go in there and say, we need this and this and this, and we're not going to play unless we get it. I'm worried for them. I got to say this, because here's something I don't think anybody really knows unless they do the research. You might assume that these women have to play elsewhere, and they do. Many of them have careers. There's some of the big players have like record labels, furniture companies, like online businesses they run just to supplement their income. But the majority of them, I think more than half, go to Europe and play. And
where women's basketball is incredibly
huge.
popular.
So they get paid more in Europe.
Way more. The starting salary in Europe is $100,000. Starting salary,
usually with all expenses and tax free,
insurance,
with automobiles, hotel, almost everything covered.
It's a legitimate women's league over there. So this is like the secondary league, and that's why it's going to be a problem for them to go to this, into this holdout with the CBA and say we need this and this and this. The good thing is Europe sort of has the model built, right? And they're doing well. They're popular. These women are celebrities over there. And that's the point I wanted to make here at the end of this conversation is that, to me, that's what really needs to happen is not only all right, let's get to numbers first real quick. The big number in the NBA, I'm not going to talk about Steph Curry's salary, and I'm not going to compare that to Breanna Stewart's salary. That's ludicrous. Nobody should do that. Don't go to the Spotrac and compare the women and men. Don't do it. It's just silly because the NBA has had decades more to get to this point. They've gone through their humps. They've taken their lumps. They're at an unbelievable point right now. You don't compare any sport to the NBA right now in terms of money. You just don't do it. So I'm not going to have that conversation. But what I am going to have is the revenue conversation. The last time that the NBA had to go through a CBA situation, the players themselves, LeBron, Chris Paul, a couple others, sat in a room and said, we're not leaving until we get 50% of the revenue. And they were successful with that. So whatever half of the revenue is for the NBA, that turns into the salary revenue for the players, and that's how the salary cap is driven and all that. With the WNBA, that figure is 23% right now. That's just unacceptable. And you can understand that being the reason they want to hold out here. I mean, obviously these franchises are not making tons of money. I'm sure the owners are bleeding money right now. It's 23 years old. Sure. You're not going to make money in that kind of a situation, until something really big hits. But they're also not promoting. They're not giving themselves an opportunity to hit big. You know what I mean? Like these major stars. I mean, we've had this unbelievable run of women's college basketball, and they have not been able to capitalize on it. You know what I mean? These girls all do play in the WNBA. The Maya Moores, the Brianna, they're all there.
I'll even go back a little bit, like the Diana Taurasi's, right?
Do you
Lisa
know
Leslie.
she had to go abroad a couple of times. They can't even take care of these major mega superstars that we follow for 4 years in college.
Right.
And to me, that's just an opportunity miss because we are watching college women's basketball. We are doing brackets in March. We're doing this stuff. That stuff that popularity needs to translate directly to the women's league. And unfortunately, it's getting bled out over to Europe where they're able to make a living over there. So the supplemental income is a huge problem because these women feel like they're part-time here and they are part-time here. Here's the numbers. The max salary right now, and there's only one person making it, is $127,000. There's only one person making that. The average, I'm going to guesstimate because I don't have the bonus information sort of locked down yet, but I'm going to guess it's right around that 100,000 mark. Right around there. The middle class is about 90,000, around there. So your rookies coming in, if they're the top, first round rookies, they're making about $53,000, which sounds like a decent living, but no way.
Not in professional sports.
No way.
No.
When you talk about all the money we just talked about in golf, all that exists with these women as well too, and we're going to get into it. The big gripe they have, obviously, is the revenue, the revenue split, and how their number is so low compared to other sports. But it's also really stupid stuff that just seems like no-brainers. These are 6'5" women, and they're sitting in coach in normal rows. They're not getting the exit rows. They're not getting
charter flight.
No, and I wouldn't expect. They're not asking for that from what I've read. They're not asking for luxury, but they're not getting TSA pre-check, so they're standing in the lines that we're standing in, which you can go one way or another on that. But when you're traveling all the time like they are, that's a pain in the rear. And they're 6'5" women not getting extra leg room that the league could be providing them. That's $15 a trip.
Either way. Like, get global entry. Either for them, it's $100,
but
and
the
your TSA pre-approved. I agree. If
you're going to pay me $53,000, I shouldn't have to go pay.
And there's no
other
professional sport that flies its players coach, or none of the every other major men's professional sport charter flights on all their games.
And from what I'm reading, they're not even complaining about that. They're not asking for first class. They just want a little bit better living.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just make this a little bit nicer for us because you are our part-time job and we are putting in all this work. I mean, these girls, the second they finish their season in the WNBA, they're gone. They're going right to Europe for their real season. You know what I mean? And look we finally had one really bite them in the butt here. Breanna Stewart went to Europe, had a full season, made a good paycheck.
Former UConn star.
Tore an ACL. She's not going to play the entire 2019 season. She was the MVP of the league last year in the WNBA. And she's out for the entire year now because of an injury that happened in Europe. And when that starts happening, it's bittersweet, right? Because it's happening on the cusp of this CBA lockout, which you know is going to happen. And now they've got this big elephant in the room to point to and say, look, if we're going to preserve our league and have these stars be the cornerstone of this franchise, we can't have that. Can you imagine Patrick Mahomes going and playing in the CFL to supplement his income and tearing his ACL?
Well, the
NFL would go bonkers.
Well, and then you could also argue that you tear her ACL from wear and tear from playing in two leagues.
No question.
Well, yeah.
Right? The health part of this is a huge issue.
It's why the NHL has gotten out of the Olympics because of the fear of injury for players.
All these other leagues have caught up to that. I mean, look, I went to the Sloan Conference, 6 years ago now. I sat in. This sounds like the most boring class in the history of the world, but I sat in a lecture of sleep analytics for the NBA. This is a real thing. These people have these.
Stay awake through it.
Thank you. Yeah, you're done for the day. Let's walk off. But there are sleep doctors within these organizations who are saying you need to sleep more. You're taking tomorrow's practice off. They're monitoring every step.
Partly
of these
that's
players.
because NBA players generally aren't getting into a hotel room until 2 or 3 in the morning after games.
But can you imagine what the women are going through if they're leaving practice to go to work?
Sabres did this. Circadian rhythms they're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Same deal. We would get in off the team charter someplace, especially back-to-back nights. You get to the hotel at 1 a.m. If you're going to Canada, sometimes it's 1:30. There are a few times in Montreal you got held up a little bit. Oh, you play the Canadiens tomorrow. Oh, we check every bag. It takes a little. It's a terrible French accent, but anyway, and how when you get to a hotel room, do you fall asleep right away? No
way.
Right, so everything's thrown off.
Right,
everything's thrown off a little bit. So yeah, that does matter.
It does matter. So the health part of it is a real big deal, and it's what a lot of the women are clamoring about. That, you know, we're not complaining that we get to play in two different leagues. They're blessed, of course. They all feel great, you know, grateful that they get an American league and a European league that, you know, want them. But that's not sustainable. And if this league is going to continue to flourish, the WNBA, and flourish is maybe the wrong word, but you need these women, these superstars coming out of UConn and Baylor and, you know, Notre Dame. You need them in your league for 10 plus years. You just do. You need longevity out of these superstars, because that's the only way for fans to sort of latch on. It's what every other sport is losing, right? I mean, you're having these Kevin Durant's bounce around the league 3-4 times in his career, and that's a detriment to the fans of the hometown. But in a league that's still as new as WNBA, you need consistency. And I'm not saying no player movement, because that drives news, that drives social media. We've talked about that here a lot.
Drives excitement. It drives
player-centric modeled, you know, leagues are good for the leagues themselves, because we're all talking about it all the time, and they do need some of that. We did just have a couple of trades that actually made some news in WNBA, but for the most part, you want these core players in these big cities, in the New Yorks and in the Vegases and the Los Angeleses, to be there, so that you can have a fan base that can latch onto them and then grow together. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. The money's okay, bad, talk about it. You know, the salary. I think the salaries need to come up, of course, but they've just got to be making more of the pot, and we need to know what that pot is. And I think that's what the arguments are going to be in this next CBA.
All right. I'm going to have my Dynasty owner team is going to have circadian rhythm studies for my fantasy.
Yeah, we need that in fantasy, right? Who's too tired to play this week?
Yeah. Dynasty owner, by the way, and if you haven't heard about this, make sure you pay attention right now and check this out. Dynasty owner, it is the first Dynasty Salary Cap fantasy sports game that not only lets you play the game week to week, but uses actual contracts, actual salaries, giving you the roster power to be the coach, general manager, and, of course, you're the owner. You don't just trade players for players. So Dynasty owner, you can acquire draft picks or Dynasty dollars, which is the virtual currency used to play the game. You rack them up each week, win or lose, and you build a Dynasty long-term, year to year. And one of the great things about it is the percentage points for your bench, because it's happened to every one of us in fantasy football where you have a player sitting out that week, you're trying to look at a matchup, and then you got it wrong. Guy went off, or a player gets hurt. Darrelle Revis didn't cover the guy that week, and boom, he has a big week. Well, don't worry. Deep bench, you'll get a percentage of your bench points in Dynasty Owner. So make sure you check it out, dynastyowner.com. You get to stop playing fantasy sports, own it, dynastyowner.com. Sign up for the 2019 beta draft. Matter of fact, if you do it well enough, maybe the Jets will hire you, Paul, to be the general manager.
Yeah, they are looking for someone right now. We're going to wrap this edition of the Spotrac podcast up with a little topic of discussion about New York City and the disaster that a number of teams and a number of sports are, starting with the Jets, then to your Mets, to the Knicks. But let's start with with the Jets.
I didn't even include the Giants in this conversation, because that's a whole nother enchilada.
Right, some people think they're equally as a disaster too.
Eli just, it was a great press coverage yesterday.
Did you see the photo of Eli Manning and Daniel Jones practicing?
They're exactly the same person.
It's the exact same facial expression. Yep. It's unbelievable. It's an all-time picture.
Yeah. So the Jets,
no wonder why I get them.
The Jets shocked the world by firing their general manager and promoting a coach they hired a couple of months ago to the position until they can figure out what they're doing there. It is just too much ammunition for those in the world that think the Jets are just a disaster and always are and always will be. The timing is odd, is weird, although really not. Honestly, in NFL circles, it's this is one of the points in the year when you make front office changes. After the draft, contracts go through the draft. It's hard to do that earlier in the year. So I know it on the outside it looks horrid that you just let this guy determine your off season and then you fired him. But it's not, frankly, it's not ridiculously unusual in the NFL. What you would hope is that the people that are still within the organization, ownership and so on, played enough of a role in the decisions that were made in the offseason that they were decisions they would have made regardless who the general manager is.
Let me answer that question this way. Do some research on Adam Gase during the draft. and you'll have a lot of fun with that. Did you hear this?
Well,
story?
I read he moved his seat so he wouldn't be on the TV shot.
He
on
got
the
himself
TV
out of the
room
view.
camera.
He did not want to be seen. And
well, that's after the introductory press conference. He didn't want the
the eyes.
Get the eyes.
Yeah, maybe those eyes meant something. Yeah, he got himself out of the way, and he essentially, and this is what the New York guys have said, he wanted no part of that draft. None. And now, I didn't think it was a bad draft. I thought it was an incorrect positional draft for them. Quentin Williams is one of the best players in that draft. I mean, he's going to be a top
Some people
three,
thought the best player in the draft.
Right.
But, we're in an era where you just drafted your quarterback.
See, what surprised me the most about this was Adam Gase has a very questionable background
Can I say
as
this?
a coach.
Who the hell is Adam Gase?
Who the hell is Adam Gase?
Isn't that the biggest point here?
One of the reasons he got fired in Miami was apparently there were stories about he kind of pissed everybody off there with this, I know better than you, I'm the boss, you do it my way. So that's shocking to me. It's shocking to me that you not only hired him with all this baggage, but then just continue to give him more and more power. And then he basically pouted when he didn't get what he wanted in the draft, went to ownership, and that led you ownership to fire the general manager.
Well, if you're ownership, what can you do? What's the easier position to get rid of right now?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right?
That's a good question.
Because you listen, you've got your players in, you've got all your systems set to go. Mini camps are here. Training camps just over a month away. To change GMs like.
But wait, it was so bad that they had to move on it this year. They couldn't give these two a year to figure it out.
I
I
agree with.
To me, it smacks like being all in on Gase, because if you're going to take Gase's side in this, which apparently it was, that's what happened here. Gase didn't like him. They didn't mesh. He didn't do what he wanted. So whether Gase was the guy in the owner's ear more so than the former GM Mike McCagnon tells you, well, this guy is the one that complained more, and he's my new shiny new toy, so I'm going to side with him. Now, what's come out of New York was that there was some unhappiness with the general manager even previous to the Gase signing, so this was starting to go down that road to some degree.
Then shame on them, because you know what happened? That GM pumped out $300 million in contracts and $130 million guaranteed.
Right.
That's what he did this offseason.
Yep.
That's more than any other GM in football. The Jets let him have free reign. So if they hated him, don't let him do that. You know what I mean? Don't let him do that. Don't let him play an inside linebacker for $90 million.
As I've always been told, Kevin, in covering the NFL for all these years, when things happen that make absolutely no sense, it's usually because it's the owner that got involved. And in most cases, we're starting to learn most of the owners in the NFL are idiots. Idiots when it comes to being NFL owners.
Let's make sure we snip at that, all right? For a soundbite.
Yeah, that
was
Paul Peck. I'm just. They've been. Listen, here's the thing. I think with long-time owners, like these are, most of them have accumulated.
Most of them aren't long-term owners. That's the problem.
Well, but they're educated people, and they can pick up on a thing or two. It depends how active they want to be. And frankly, if I owned a team, I'd be pretty damn active. Like if I put that big of an investment, I want to know what the hell's going on.
But active and qualified are two different things.
It's not like this was a sit back and let's see how the offseason goes kind of year for them.
Right.
They were all
in.
They let this guy do whatever the heck he wanted. Oh, Le'Veon Bell, you want $24 million? Yeah, go ahead. Let's go.
Well, who the hell hired Gase? It's obviously the owner.
It wasn't the GM, right?
Correct.
Well, I guess not, even though he was supposedly involved in running the search.
It's just so silly.
Yeah,
this is silly. Yeah, Adam Gase has no experience with
Doug Whaley ran the search on Rex Ryan.
He was in the room.
Come on.
Right.
He stayed out of the camera.
Which to my point, and I don't want to make a blanket statement, I think that, if you read the story that ESPN, the magazine, did about the Cleveland Browns and their owner a couple of months ago, it made your head spin that the guy could be so ridiculously bad and impetuous. And my point is that the new generation of owners in the NFL are incredibly successful people who have made a lot of money in most cases and been very good at what they are, businessmen. But being a good businessman and being a good NFL owner are completely different and almost unrelated. And the problem is, when you're an owner, you come in with a certain amount of authority because of who you are and a certain amount of ego, and everybody else acquiesces to what you want to do. And in most cases, we're starting to see a lot of the decisions that are being made by owners are the wrong ones, partly because they don't listen to the people that they've hired.
Or they hire bad people.
Or they hired bad people. So,
right.
That's, Daniel Snyder, and we can rattle off a lot of these guys, and all you have to do is read some of the incredible stories that ESPN has done over the years about owners, the situations with LA and whatever. My reaction to reading them was like, how could these guys be so stupid sometimes? They're supposed to be incredibly smart, successful people.
Let's move on to the Mets then.
There you go. Not necessarily as quietly successful there, right?
I wrote him into the show, so I got to take the lumps.
Yes,
I guess.
you do.
I'm gonna. Speaking of GMs, I'm going to have a problem with here. Look, we talked about this the second he was hired. We talked about this when he was hired. This guy was the agent for half the Mets team, and then he brought in like 3 more former clients to the Mets, and we all said, "Oh, this could work. Could work. Maybe it'll work." It didn't work. All right. I know it's May, but it didn't work. Robinson Cano can't hit. He's not trying. He just got benched because he didn't try. We owe him $100 million more over the next 4 seasons. So
when you say we, you mean
it's me.
Mets, yeah.
I'm in.
It's purchases of Mets memorabilia.
Yeah. I'm actually wearing a Mets T-shirt today underneath my Warriors.
Are you? Yeah. It's your undershirt, though, right? That's usually how people wear Mets T-shirts. Look, here's the numbers. It's silly. It's dumb. Yoenis Cespedes, I don't know, didn't fall off a horse, but fell into a hole and broke his ankle, and he's got bad hips, and he doesn't really try either. But we owe him $60 million more. He played 38 games last year. He's going to play 0 this year.
He's done.
3 years, $90 million.
Yuck.
What are you going to do? Jed Lowry, another Brody Van Wagenen client, brought over to be a 3rd-string shortstop on this team. 2 years, $20 million. Has yet to step on the field. Just got sent to the 60-day IL. Excuse me. Todd Frazier's 150 years old. $9 million more in 2019. He's batting .208 as a Met. That's not going to do it for me.
That's 208 points higher than you and I.
And Jed Lowry, by the way.
Yes, that's right.
Right. I mean, there were at least 8 that I could find, current Mets players, that this was his agent last year. That's not good. It isn't good because this guy is involuntarily going to bat for these players. He is.
Well, he's got subconscious bias,
right? He's got a history with them. He knows their family lives. He knows he can't separate church and state with these players. You know what I'm saying? And that's a problem for a team that needs to really go. I mean, look at you did sign DeGrom, a former client of Brody Van Wagenen, of course, who's noticeably been taking starts off. I'm guessing that's not the coach's decision. Syndergaard needs to get paid. Wheeler needs to get paid. Matz is going to need to get paid. We're in this era right now. Like, you had your rookie quarterback, right? This was your 4-year window with these Mets pitchers, and it's gone. And now they're, 4 games under 500. And, whether you're a fan or not, you had to look at that Mets pitching staff and be a fan of it.
Yes.
Right? They all sort of hit at the same time. It's like getting your running back, your wide receiver, your quarterback, and your tight end on rookie deals all at the same time. And you're like, it's the Chiefs. That's what it is. It's the Chiefs before 2 of the Chiefs had to go away. But it's essentially that, right? That's what the Mets had in their pitching rotation. They all kind of came up together, and you had to think this is going to work eventually. Well, we're at that point where it needs to work, and it's not working. So who else are you going to blame? They're going to blame the manager. He's going to be fired probably by Friday. Take the fall for this, but it's a financial mess. It's an on-the-field mess, and I have to stem it back to the fact that this guy is a former agent who had way too many ties to these players directly. I mean, he was, if you're bringing in an agent who dealt directly with West Coast players or somebody who knew the system, knows the current, structure of baseball, blah, 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 but didn't have these relationships, maybe there's a chance for that to be successful. We've seen that in other teams. This just was, like bringing your uncle in and saying, let's go. And it just didn't work. And I don't see a path for where that's going to succeed. So that's enough about the Mets.
All right. Paul, the Knicks.
Yep. Didn't get that number 1
pick. It's not rigged. It's not rigged.
It's not rigged. Shocking,
you
huh?
You had to think it was when the Lakers jumped up, though. I mean, that had everybody spinning.
Sure it did. But
goodness.
The Pelicans...
That was TV, man.
Win the NBA lottery. The Knicks do not.
We talked about it that morning.
We did.
What if the Pelicans win the lottery?
Yes.
So that's the question right now. What if, now that the Pelicans have won, what the heck happens?
Did he hire?
I don't think Zion smiled.
I also think we should.
Connor McDavid being right. The Edmonton Oilers winning the lottery.
Where the hell is Edmonton?
I think we should also talk about whether there's any chance that Zion goes back to Duke at all.
0. He goes to Europe before he goes to Duke.
Okay.
He's getting paid. He's getting paid by a sneaker company and by a basketball team this year somehow. I think it's going to be New Orleans. I just think that the logical step then is what happens to Anthony Davis.
Sure.
I mean, you have to run him out of town at this point. The guy walked into the stadium wearing a shirt that said, "That's all, folks."
Yeah.
I mean,
Seems like there's no way
come
you
back
could
from that.
No, probably not.
Well, hold on a second, though. Does this change his mind? Like, oh, wait a
But
second.
do they let him change his mind? Is my point.
Well,
Because they put their foot down. This is it Loomis? Loomis owns this team too, right?
The Saints owner.
Yes.
Yes. No, not Loomis. The Benson
Gail.
family.
Benson family.
Gail Benson.
Yes.
She put her foot down on that first trade. So she's got the leverage here. It's her decision.
Here's the problem they're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Like, all apologies to the great folks of New Orleans. They're not a mega NBA franchise.
They're the lowest.
Yeah.
They're the smallest
So,
NBA franchise in the league.
He's not going to want to be there long term.
Davis?
No, I'm talking about Zion.
Well,
right?
but he's there for 4 years.
He's there for 4 years.
Yeah.
So that's your window is 4 years. So you don't need a malcontent in Davis.
Yeah.
And if you can move him to get parts to play with Zion and try to do something soon. I mean, they've tried, by the way, when they got Cousins a couple years ago. It's not like they haven't tried. I mean,
Drew Holiday.
Yeah, they had a very nice team, but they've got small windows. The franchise like New Orleans. So, yeah, and this makes it easier. This makes it easier to move on from Davis because it's all about Zion.
I agree.
Right?
Let's bring it back to the Knicks because they won the number 3 pick. Is that enough? I mean, they don't have a roster of players they can just
No.
First of all, they've got to match Davis's money. That has to happen in an NBA trade. You got to match the money. So they've got to put together quite a package of players, and they're not really desirable players. Plus the number 3 pick, plus maybe another first in 2020 or something.
You could get the Duke teammates maybe with 1 and 3.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're drafting RJ Barrett, you trade him to the Pelicans. Is that enough for the Pelicans? I tend to think Boston still wins out here because Boston needs to gut that team, right?
Yes.
I mean,
they need to make some changes.
That was the end of that. They still, I would imagine, want Anthony Davis as the cornerstone going forward because Kyrie Irving is not the cornerstone going forward. But they've got NBA-ready players that they could acquire. And to me, that's more appealing to New Orleans.
I would agree. Yeah, you can't.
Right?
If you got a 4-year window with Zion, if you're looking at that way, you need some NBA players.
With playoff experience,
yes,
by the way, which
to
the
play,
Lakers don't have.
To show him the way, he's not coming in like Jordan and scoring all these points. I don't see that because his jump shots not that good, but he's a star. There's no doubt about that. And he'll be, we talk about Blake Griffin, more like Blake Griffin when he came in. He'll be a force to reckon with. I think he's going to play in the NBA because there's too much money he'll leave off the table. I don't care what sneaker deal he's got. They don't want that sneaker deal in Europe. They want it here in the United States.
All right, so we talked about the
China, though.
the disasters of the Jets, the Mets, and the Knicks. So I think the way to wrap this up is the question for you two guys. Does professional sports need successful teams in New York City?
I think those.
Because that's what we're talking about here, isn't it?
I think those days are done. I think we all want it because that's where the TV networks exist, and that's where you can show more primetime games. Does it matter?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you when the Stanley Cup Finals are set. We'll tell you if it matters.
St. Louis. Well, Boston.
Well, Boston's in. But
they were dying for Carolina, St. Louis.
Yeah,
though.
if it was going to be Carolina. In St. Louis, it'd have been like, whoa. I think it matters media market-wise for ratings. I think it does.
Really?
Yeah, I do. For network contracts, absolutely.
Because there's more eyes in New York to be watching the
Sure.
Knicks? Yeah.
Listen, do you think all that money be paid to the NFL? Well, NFL's different because of the gambling aspect of that. So, which we might be coming close to that.
Here in New York.
Here in New York State.
Yeah. I just think in the world we live in now where you can see any game, any way, anywhere, it's not what it used to be that it needed to be the over-the-air channel in New York. I don't know that New York has the significance beyond what you talked about, Kevin. I just don't know that a league needs to have its New York team be successful to be successful.
The NBA is a clear example of that because,
yes.
I mean, NBA proves your point. Exactly.
Let me put it this way. Because the last point I made here for the show is Zion not being in New York more enticing to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and those players who are going to be on the move, right?
To go to New York?
Yes, right? Because Zion's going to take a ton of the attention wherever he is. And I kind of like that it's in this nice, quaint little New Orleans, franchise that, once they do part ways with Anthony Davis, is going to need that centerpiece. He can be that centerpiece, and even if he's not the best player on that team, he can be the most polarizing, right? And that
yes.
But Kevin Durant, from all signs, from all reports, wants to be both. He wants to be the best player on the court and the most polarizing player of that franchise. He wants to be the man, right? Because he hasn't had that yet. And if Zion was going to the Knicks, I wonder if that means Durant doesn't go.
And the Warriors proven that he's not the man. They just swept the Blazers.
Amazing, isn't it?
Right.
Amazing.
Steph Curry is the man of all men.
Curry is the man. Yeah, and Green, by the way.
When he wants to be.
Right. When he wants to be, is an amazing player. He's Dennis Rodman, but better. How's that?
Draymond Green, with his mouth closed, is what I really want for Zion Williamson. That's what I want. I want that kind of player.
Comparison.
That's what I want. I think he can be better because I think he can be more polarizing around the rim. You know what I mean, with a little hoops and stuff. But that's the kind of player I think. See, and that's not the star, right? That's what I'm saying here. I don't think Zion's going to be the best player on the court all the time. They're eventually going to have to acquire somebody to go above him and be, the shooter, the outside shooter, obviously, which is where the league is right now. But I wonder if it's a blessing for the Knicks not to get Zion Williamson, because it does keep the door open for 3 legitimate free agents to come now. Whereas putting Zion with, some big personalities, you never know how that's going to work. We didn't see it. Certainly didn't work in Boston, right? And we've seen it not work elsewhere. So I just wonder now if New York is set up for a better scenario with a Durant and a Kemba Walker in a situation like that. We'll see.
I do have advice for Zion Williamson, if he hasn't already. Talk to our friends at Morgan Stanley Global Sports Entertainment.
Yeah, he's ready.
So you're ready.
Yeah, they can handle that Nike deal. Don't worry.
They can handle the Nike deal. They can handle the contract, and they can guide you on what to do with the money so you make informed decisions. Learn more. Visit morganstanley.com/GSE. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, LLC, member SIPC. That does it for another edition of the Spotrac.com podcast. Remember, check out the premium section, ad-free experience. All the contracts are there. WNBA there, as we've talked about. Golf coming soon. For Mike Giannetti and Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. We'll talk to you next time here on the Spotrac podcast.